So next step now is we're going to mark out the opening in this wall where the cavity slider is going to go. So Mick's going to do that to plumb it up on both sides, pull this sheet of gyprock out, then we're going to start mucking around with some of this framing. Okay, so we've got our plasterboard cut out where our cavity slider is going to go. Now, what you do with this is basically you've got the cavity sliding unit which is going to sit inside the wall, and then you've got your door that slides out of it. So you normally measure the depth of your cavity sliding door unit plus the door, and then I add about 100 millimeters just to allow for putting studs either side. So now that that's cut out, the next step is to really determine what sort of weight is above there. Luckily enough, we've got a manhole here in the garage, so I'll pop my head up in the roof, have a bit of a look, and see whether this wall is load bearing or not. If it's load bearing, we'll have to put a deeper timber head through just to take the weight. If it's not load bearing, we can probably just get away with a couple of 90mm timber trimmers above the top of it. Okay, so we're pretty lucky actually, because the wall that runs through here, that's the top plate down here, and at the moment it's not load bearing. We're lucky because these trusses run from wall to wall, so the load is on all of the external walls, and this internal wall, all it has is a couple of these trimmers through here just to take the edges of the plasterboard. So we're pretty safe to basically be able to put a 90mm timber just as a trimmer in the head down there, and then we can pull the studs out from underneath it and put our cavity slider in. Now that we know that's non-load bearing, what we do is measure the height of this, which is 2100. I normally like to allow about between 10 to 15mm gap at the top so that there's no weight, if it does come down, transferred onto the load of this. So we'll go 2120, and that'll be the underside of our framing, and then we'll go up another 90mm for our stud that our trimmer head that we're going to put through the top there. Okay, so now that those studs are stripped out, I like to leave the plasterboard on the inside of the wall if we're retrofitting it. That way we can actually put the unit in, leave this little bit of gyprock on the side that sits on the cavity, and then all we're really doing is then cutting out the gyprock where the opening is going to go. So that way it saves replastering on the other side of the wall. You can be quite neat and get away with doing that tidy enough so that you just run architraves around the door frame, and then that's complete. It's this side that probably takes more work, with then putting another sheet of plasterboard on and setting over this side of the cavity. Then we put our two end studs in and our top stud, and it's pretty much framed and ready to go. We're going to assemble this cavity slider. Basically we put the top head on, and then we put it in, level it up, fix it all into position, screw that other piece of gyprock on the other side, and then we can get our door hung with our rollers and everything else. So you'll see here on the end of the cavity up the top, they've got these blocks. Basically we just need to knock that off, pull out the little pins, and then we can insert this head. So this basically lays in, and we put some screws down into the top of each one of these, and then we can stand this thing up and plumb it. So the next step, once it's in place, basically you can put a tack down into the bottom here just to stop this end from rolling around. So there's a little cleat there that you can just screw into, down into the floor. We want to plumb this style up and screw the back of it off into the frame back here, just to make sure it's all nice and secure. We're just putting some glue on the back of these rails so when it goes up to the existing sheet it's going to hold it in position. Once you've got it plumbed level, you want to fix it through the back plate here into your framing. Put some backers behind it so it doesn't pull over, and just make sure it's in the right spot. Then we just do the same, top, middle and bottom, so 3 fixings in the back should do the trick. Now I'm just going to come around and pop a couple of screws in this side to hold the plasterboard back to the cavity. Now the trick with this is just to make sure that you don't use long screws. Now you don't want to penetrate inside the cavity there, otherwise your door will get scratched. So just got 20mm screws, just go through the 10mm plaster and 10mm into that batten until the glue dries. Now that that side's packed, there's a couple more steps. One is we need to put this jamb on this side for the door to close against, and we also need to insert the rollers on top of the door and then get the door into the track. So what I normally do is I'll fix this up the top so it's attached, and then I'll just leave the bottom loose. And the reason I do that is because, one, it's an existing door, and even if it's a new door, you want to have it so that if something is slightly out, you can move the door across and then pack this jamb to actually suit so it closes nice and flush against the edge of the door. Next step now is to put these brackets for the rollers on the top of the door. So all I'll do is measure across 80mm in from each end and then screw these brackets on, which I'll do now. So these little rollers that come in the packet, there's a little black clip here which we'll just see. You flip that over and that's going to slide in and then lock into position to hold the roller on the door. But before we do that, we actually put the rollers into the track. So what I'll do now is pop these up, slide them in roughly into position, take the door over, and then we can clip them in and slide the door back into the cavity and finish it off. Now this can be the tricky part. It comes with a little spanner and a little tool. You want to slide each roller, have the door just sitting inside the cavity so it's not going to fall over, and then slide that roller just over to each lock. Push the little black clips back and then try and slide them in one at a time, lifting the door up as you go. So that's number one. Now with the spanner provided, each door can be adjusted just by putting the spanner onto that little nut at the top there. And you need to turn it left or right to bring that up or down depending on how your door's sitting. Now the door's in and slides. Next step is to adjust this style. This is why I was saying leave this loose, because depending on it, especially if you're using an existing door, you can slide this across and then adjust that bottom section to get it exactly how you want it. And now one of the last steps is to put these little pelmet supports up the top here. What these do basically is just cover up that gap between your track and your wheels and the door, just to seal it off. Once we cut these to length, they simply just get screwed up through the top here. And the reason we screw them into position with a couple of little end caps is so that we can take them down at a later date to still access these rollers, to be able to take them off and take the door out for whatever reason, if it's maintenance or paint or something like that. So we'll do that now, and that's pretty much it. Then all we've got left is really just to sheet this side with the plasterboard, put some marker trays around it to finish it off. Okay guys, so there you have it. That's how you install one cavity sliding door unit. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a thumbs up, like or subscribe. I'll catch you next time. Cheers guys.